Everyone talks about integrating their shadow until they truly understand what that means. Most assume it involves accepting small flaws, recognizing imperfections, or admitting they can be selfish at times. That is not shadow integration. That is spiritual self-improvement. Real shadow integration, as Carl Jung defined it, is psychologically intense. It demands that you acknowledge and take responsibility for your capacity for evil, not symbolic evil, real evil. The kind you have spent your life projecting onto others, while preserving your image as a good person. Jung was clear about this. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." His point was direct. You must confront the parts of yourself you have judged in others. You must recognize the rapist, the murderer, the betrayer, the abuser within your own psyche. Not excuse them, not analyze them from a distance, but admit their presence within you. In this discussion, we will examine what truly happens when you integrate your shadow according to Jung's original teachings. Why it is one of the most unsettling psychological processes you can experience. Why it makes you more capable, and therefore more dangerous, not simply more enlightened. And why most people who claim to have integrated their shadow have barely begun the work. Here is what Jung understood that much of modern spirituality overlooks. Your shadow is not a vague, dark side. It is your specific potential for every act you have condemned in others. Every news story that made you think, I could never do that. Your shadow is the part of you that absolutely could. The shadow holds everything your ego had to suppress to protect its identity. If you built your self-image on being kind, your shadow contains cruelty. If you take pride in honesty, your shadow includes manipulation. If you define yourself as a victim, your shadow carries potential to become a perpetrator. This is a psychological trap. The stronger your moral identity, the darker your shadow becomes. Jung observed this repeatedly. Those who appeared most righteous often carried the most violent shadows. Those who seemed the purest frequently held the most distorted impulses. This is not irony. It is structural. Every trait you strongly identify with creates an equal and opposite force within the unconscious. This explains why scandals emerge in places that claim moral authority, why priests commit abuse, why spiritual leaders exploit students, and why social justice advocates can become harsh or punitive. Being good does not eliminate the shadow. When ignored, it gains strength in the dark. During his confrontation with the unconscious, Carl Jung encountered parts of himself that deeply disturbed him: violent impulses, sexual distortions, and grand fantasies of power. He came to a difficult realization. This was not corruption from outside. This was part of him. Most individuals continue projecting their shadow onto others: the corrupt politician, the harmful former partner, the criminal figure. As long as the shadow remains external, they can preserve their identity as morally upright. True integration requires reclaiming those rejected parts and recognizing them within. That is where the real psychological challenge begins. Jung's first principle disrupts many spiritual paths. Acknowledging the shadow is not enough. You must consciously face and experience it. In controlled and responsible circumstances, you must confront the very tendencies you condemn. This is not symbolic. If you judge people who lie, you must examine your own capacity to deceive and notice the internal reward it brings. If you condemn infidelity, you must confront your potential to betray. If you despise abusers, you must admit your impulse to control or harm, not as an abstract idea, but as lived awareness. One of Jung's patients, a woman who had defined herself through selflessness, spent decades judging selfish people. Jung asked her to do something profoundly challenging. For 1 week, act completely selfish. Prioritize herself in every situation. Say no without explanation. Follow only her own interests. She reported it was the most unsettling week of her life. Not because selfishness felt wrong, but because it felt right. She experienced power, freedom, and vitality. That realization shattered her self-image. I spent 40 years feeling morally superior to selfish people. Now I see I was repressing the very impulses they expressed. Their selfishness was always within me. This is the first transformation, the death of moral superiority. You cannot hold the belief that you are inherently better than those you judge. Every trait you condemn exists fully within your psyche. The difference lies only in awareness. Jung went further. You must form a relationship with these traits. Speak with your inner manipulator and learn from it. Sense your sadistic impulses and understand their purpose. Acknowledge violent fantasies without judgment. Jung himself, a pacifist, encountered this directly. In dialogue with his shadow, a ruthless warrior figure appeared. Everything he had suppressed. Jung instructed, "You must learn from this figure." He realized the warrior maintained boundaries a pacifist could not. The violence was not pathological. It was necessary. This is true integration. Shadow qualities are not eliminated. They are consciously incorporated. You become capable of cruelty, but choose kindness. Capable of deception, but choose honesty. Capable of violence, but choose peace. The critical word is capable. You must embrace your capacity for evil to exercise genuine freedom in being good. Jung said, "I would rather be whole than merely good." Wholeness includes every aspect you have projected onto others. Evil is not transcended. It is integrated. And in doing so, you become far more powerful and far more dangerous than you were as a purely good person. Once you integrate your shadow, the simplicity of being good disappears. You become psychologically nuanced, morally complex, and this will make unconsciously good people uneasy around you. Before integration, your goodness was predictable. Others knew what to expect. You were safe because all dangerous qualities had been suppressed. You were the friend who never lost temper, the partner who never retaliated, the person who absorbed harm without pushback. After integration, that predictability ends. You reclaimed your power. You remain capable of kindness, but you are also capable of cruelty. You can forgive, but you can also seek retribution. You can feel compassion, but you can also express cold detachment. The shadow traits you integrate don't vanish. They become accessible. One therapist described the change after her shadow work. "My friend said I had changed. I used to carry everyone's problems, never set limits, always be available. After integration, I could say no. I could act in my own self-interest. I could be firm or even distant when necessary. People didn't like the new me because I would no longer let them exploit me. My previous goodness had been codependency. Those who integrate their shadow stop performing goodness and start consciously choosing it. And that choice can look very different from mere performance. Conscious kindness might require saying no. Conscious compassion might mean letting someone face the consequences of their actions. Conscious love can mean leaving someone you deeply care about. To those who haven't integrated their shadows, this may seem like betrayal, but the person who has integrated their shadow contains all qualities and their opposites and chooses moment by moment which to express. Jung warned that shadow integration often disrupts relationships. People who loved you when you were good may struggle to accept you when you become whole. They were drawn to your light because it allowed them to project their own shadow onto you. Your integration forces them to reclaim their shadow, and many would rather let you go than face it. One man described losing his spiritual community. "I used to be the gentle, evolved one, never angry, always understanding. After integration, I could express anger when necessary, confront toxic behavior, be assertive. My community said I'd lost my way. What I had actually done was stop being their punching bag. They prefer me unconscious." This is the loneliness of integration. You lose those who need you to remain small. But after that, you begin attracting others who have also done the work. People who hold both light and shadow and make conscious choices rather than suppressing their unconscious. Integrating your shadow unlocks tremendous psychological power that was previously trapped in repression. This power is morally neutral. It can be used to create or destroy. Every quality you repress consumes energy to maintain. Your mind constantly works to keep the shadow hidden, demanding enormous psychological resources. When you integrate it, that energy is freed. Suddenly, you gain access to power you didn't realize you had. But this isn't the safe, loving kind of power. It is raw, primal, and potentially dangerous. Power to influence, to dominate, to hurt, or to protect. Jung emphasized, the shadow itself is not inherently evil, but it contains immense power. Once integrated, that power becomes available to consciousness, and how you use it determines everything. A minister came to Jung after defining himself by being loving, forgiving, and Christ-like. Through shadow integration, he discovered a startling truth. He had the capacity to be psychologically devastating. He could instantly read others' weaknesses, manipulate with precision, and destroy someone with words if he chose. He told Jung, "Before integration, I felt powerless. I was good but weak. After integration, I feel dangerous. I can hurt people now, but I choose not to most of the time. The choice is mine, and that changes everything." You don't eliminate your capacity for darkness. You bring it into consciousness so you can decide whether to act on it. An integrated person is not harmless. They are capable of enormous harm, but usually choose restraint. And here is the unsettling part. Sometimes integrated individuals do choose to use their shadow consciously, not unconsciously, but intentionally when darkness serves a purpose. They may be cruel when cruelty upholds truth, destructive when destruction clears space for growth. A woman Jung worked with discovered her own capacity for strategic cruelty. Previously, she had been overly kind, letting others take advantage of her. After integration, someone was spreading lies about me at work. Omi would have absorbed it, responded with kindness. I waited for the right moment and strategically exposed their lies, destroying their credibility. It was calculated, effective, and I felt no guilt. That scared me. My shadow had given me teeth, and I would use them. Jung would say, "This is proper integration. You reclaim the power to defend yourself. You're no longer at the mercy of manipulators because you can act in return. You're no longer defenseless." But this introduces a new moral reality. You are no longer innocent. You can't claim to be simply a good person to whom bad things happen. You are a whole person, capable of both constructive and destructive action, and conscious of the choice between them. And you are fully responsible for the choices you make. If what I'm describing feels frightening, if you're realizing that true shadow integration is nothing like the spiritual teachings you've encountered, good. That fear is your ego sensing its own death. Jung would say this is precisely where the real work begins. Before we continue, check out our new guide, True Self-Discovery, featuring 24 practical reflection exercises inspired by Jung's teachings, designed to help you navigate your inner world. Click below to access it. Now, the final stage is where most people stop. Jung's 4 stage is rarely discussed because it's profoundly painful. You must grieve the permanent loss of your innocence. Once you have seen and claimed your capacity for evil, you can never unsee it. You can never go back to believing you are fundamentally good. Before integration, you could assume basic goodness. Yes, you made mistakes, but at your core, you were good. You could observe evil in the world and feel separate from it. I could never do that. I'm not like them. After integration, that comfort disappears forever. You have seen that you could absolutely act in those ways. The darkness exists within you. The difference between you and the person you condemn lies in circumstance, awareness, and choice. A social worker who devoted her life to helping abused children experience profound grief during integration. I used to help from moral superiority, the good ones saving them from bad people. After integration, I realize I'm not better. I'm simply choosing to use my capacity for power differently. But I'm not innocent. That innocence I relied on as armor, it's gone. This loss felt like a death because it destroyed the ego structured around being good, the identity that felt superior to wrongdoers. And this grief is ongoing. You don't grieve once and move on. You continuously encounter new layers of your shadow, new capacities for harm. Integration is not a single event. It is a lifelong process of confronting the darker aspects of your psyche. One man described it. Every time I think I've integrated my shadow, I discover another layer that horrifies me. I integrated my anger, then found sadism. I integrated my selfishness, then found cruelty. When does it end? Jung's answer, it doesn't. This cultivates what Jung called existential humility. Not the false humility of denying your abilities, but the true humility of understanding your capacity for atrocity. You can never feel morally superior again. You can never judge from a place of innocence. But Jung also discovered something redemptive. The loss of innocence marks the birth of wisdom. You become profoundly compassionate because you understand evil from the inside. You grow less judgmental because you see yourself in those you once condemned. You gain real power because you're no longer naive about your own darkness. The innocence you mourn was actually ignorance. The goodness you lose was repression. What feels like a fall is, in fact, awakening. Jung's final truth. Once you integrate your shadow, you become responsible for everyone's shadows, not legally, but psychologically. You realize that every atrocity humans commit is something you are also capable of. Every story of human darkness reflects a potential within your own psyche, given different circumstances. This is a collective shadow, not just your personal repressed traits. The entire weight of human evil, genocide, torture, abuse throughout history, lives in your unconscious as possibility. A Holocaust survivor came to Jung, struggling with survivor's guilt, and made a harrowing discovery. I wanted to believe I survived because I was morally superior to Nazis. Integration forced me to see the truth. I survived by chance, not because I lacked their capacity for evil. Jung's response: this is the burden of consciousness. You must bear it. Once you integrate your shadow, you cannot participate in collective scapegoating. You cannot simply blame them, evil politicians, criminals, terrorists, because you recognize these as external expressions of the shadow you also contain. One woman described the isolation this creates. My friends were outraged about a political figure's corruption, convinced they could never be corrupt. I can join in. After integrating my shadow, I know that, given power, I could absolutely be corrupt. I'm not apathetic, just no longer innocent. This responsibility is exhausting. You can't merely blame corporations for environmental destruction. You must recognize how your own consumer choices feed them. You can't just blame politicians. You must confront the compromises and corruption within yourself. Every problem you encounter becomes, in part, your shadow to confront and own. Jung observed that those who fully integrate their shadows become the most effective agents of change. They act from genuine humility, not moral superiority. They do not seek to destroy evil externally to escape it internally. Instead, they transform the collective shadow by transforming themselves. Jung's full vision of shadow integration is this: you must consciously embody what you're condemned. You become morally ambiguous, and you lose good people. You acquire real, potentially dangerous power. You grieve the permanent loss of innocence. You assume responsibility for humanity's collective shadow. This path is not about becoming a better person. It is about becoming a whole person. Wholeness includes your capacity for evil as well as good, cruelty as well as kindness, destruction as well as creation. Jung was explicit. The shadow is not something to eliminate. It is something to integrate. Attempting elimination keeps you fragmented and innocent. Integration makes you whole and experienced. When you truly integrate, everything changes. You stop needing to appear good and start being real. You stop performing morality and begin choosing it consciously. You stop fearing your darkness and start wielding it wisely. You stop projecting evil onto others and begin transforming it within yourself. But you are never the same. The innocent self who believed in inherent goodness is gone. In their place stands someone far more complex, powerful, and real, someone who contains multitudes. You are dangerous, not despite integration, but because of it. If you are in the process of integrating your shadow, if you are discovering capacities for evil that horrify you, losing people who cannot handle your wholeness, grieving your innocence, Jung will want you to know, you are not becoming worse. You are becoming real. The fear and terror you feel are appropriate. Shadow integration is meant to disturb you. If it does not, it is not being done correctly. Keep going. The alternative is not staying innocent. It is staying fragmented. The shadow does not vanish when repressed. It grows stronger, leaks out unconsciously, and controls you from the dark. Integration is the only path to genuine freedom. And remember Jung's promise. On the other side of the shadow lies wholeness that makes the terror worthwhile. You become someone who can truly choose. Someone who can truly love from experience rather than innocence. Someone who can genuinely transform the world by integrating it within rather than destroying it outside. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the part of yourself you have not yet met. Meeting it, fully, courageously, is the most terrifying and liberating journey you will ever undertake.